Double life. In the quiet suburb of Westbridge, nothing much ever seemed to happen. Neighbors greeted each other with polite nods, children played in the well-manicured parks, and families lived in perfect, picturesque homes. Among them was the Thompson family, Mark, his wife Emma, and their two children Lily and Jake. To anyone on the outside, they were the embodiment of the American dream. Mark was a successful insurance broker, Emma a dedicated stay-at-home mom, and their life seemed flawless. But as the saying goes, appearances can be deceiving. Mark Thompson wasn't just a man of routine. He was meticulous, living by the clock. Every day, he left for work at exactly 7:30 a.m., dressed sharply in his tailored suit, kissed Emma goodbye, and waved at the kids. His office was located in the heart of the city, where he spent his days meeting clients, managing policies, and attending conferences. At least that's what Emma and everyone else believed. Unbeknownst to anyone, Mark led a second life, one that was hidden beneath layers of secrecy and deception. It wasn't until a warm summer evening that Emma began to suspect something was off. One Friday evening, Mark was supposed to return from a business trip. He had been gone for 3 days, attending a conference in Chicago. But as Emma sat at the dinner table with the kids, the clock ticking past 9 p.m., she began to feel uneasy. He hadn't called, hadn't texted. This wasn't like him. Maybe Dad's just stuck in traffic, Lily suggested, sensing her mother's anxiety. Emma smiled weakly, but her heart was racing. Something was wrong. She tried calling his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. By midnight, Mark still hadn't come home, and Emma's worry turned to fear. The next morning, Mark returned looking disheveled and exhausted with a hurried apology. There was a flight delay, he explained, not meeting her eyes. It was a nightmare. Emma wanted to believe him. She really did. But something gnawed at her, something she couldn't shake. She noticed small things, how he avoided eye contact, how he was distracted, how his phone was always on silent and face down on the counter. As the days passed, her suspicions grew. One evening, when Mark was supposed to be working late, Emma's curiosity got the better of her. She decided to check his office. She called his assistant, a friendly woman named Susan, asking if Mark had left yet. Left? Oh, Mrs. Thompson, Mark left the office hours ago, Susan said casually. Emma's heart sank. If he wasn't at work, where was he? That night, when Mark finally came home, Emma didn't confront him directly. Instead, she observed him closely, watching for any more signs of dishonesty. Over the next few weeks, Emma began piecing together a pattern. Mark's business trips had become more frequent. He would leave town for a few days, but when Emma called his hotel, they either had no record of his stay or he hadn't been seen at all. He always had a ready excuse, a plausible story, but Emma no longer believed them. Determined to uncover the truth, Emma hired a private investigator, a man named David Lang. David had seen cases like this before. Husbands leading double lives, secret affairs, gambling addictions. But what he uncovered about Mark was far more dangerous than Emma could have imagined. After a week of following Mark, David presented Emma with the truth. Mark wasn't just a man leading a double life. He was involved in organized crime. Mark had been working for a notorious crime syndicate known as the Black Lotus. By day, he was the perfect suburban husband and father, but by night, he became a key player in the syndicate's illegal operations. His role? Laundering money through shell companies and covering up financial trails to protect the organization. He had been doing it for years, hiding his criminal activities behind the facade of his respectable job. Emma's world shattered. The man she had shared her life with, the father of her children, was a criminal, She couldn't comprehend it, how he had managed to live two lives without her ever knowing. The loving husband who tucked the kids into bed was the same man who sat in dark rooms making deals with dangerous criminals. But David had more disturbing news. Recently, Mark had gotten in over his head. He owed the syndicate a large sum of money after a deal went wrong. The pressure was mounting, and Mark was running out of time. The crime bosses were watching him, and if he didn't pay up soon, they would come after him, and possibly his family. Terrified for her children's safety, Emma confronted Mark one evening after the kids had gone to bed. She demanded the truth, her voice shaking with fear and anger. Mark didn't deny it. He sat in silence for a long time, his head in his hands, before finally confessing everything. He told her how it had all started, how he had been lured into the world of crime by promises of fast money. He had thought it would be temporary, just a way to pay off some early debts, but it had spiraled out of control. Now, he couldn't escape. They had too much on him. Emma was horrified, but also determined. "We need to go to the police," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "We can't live like this," but Mark knew the consequences. "If we go to the police, they'll kill us," he said. "They'll kill you, Emma. They'll kill the kids." The weight of his words hung in the air like a storm cloud. Emma realized they were trapped. If Mark couldn't find a way to pay off his debt, their family was in danger. For weeks, Mark tried to negotiate with the syndicate, but his efforts were in vain. The crime bosses didn't trust him anymore. They wanted their money, or they wanted him dead. Desperate, Mark made a decision. Late one night, he packed a bag and kissed Emma and the children while they slept. He left a note on the kitchen counter, explaining that he had to leave to protect them. He wouldn't be coming back. When Emma found the note the next morning, she collapsed to the floor in tears. She knew Mark was sacrificing himself for their safety, but she also knew that without him, her life would never be the same. The weeks that followed were agonizing. The police arrived after Emma turned over the evidence David had gathered, but Mark was nowhere to be found. Some said he had fled the country. Others speculated he had been taken by the syndicate. No one knew for sure. Months passed, and Emma tried to rebuild her life for the sake of her children. She kept the truth hidden from them, telling them that their father was away on business, hoping that one day Mark would return. But deep down, Emma knew the man she had loved was gone, swallowed by the dark world he had tried so hard to escape. And in the quiet suburb of Westbridge, the perfect life of the Thompson family became nothing more than a memory, haunted by the secrets and lies that had torn them apart. Like, share, and comment on Subscribe this channel.